There is a quiet revolution happening in the minds of those who have discovered something the world keeps missing. While millions chase happiness in the next purchase, the next relationship, the next achievement, a few have learned to find it in the most unexpected place, right where they already are. What if everything you believed about happiness was backwards? What if the very seeking itself was the obstacle? In the mountains of Tibet, there once lived a monk who spent decades searching for the secret to lasting joy. He climbed the highest peaks, meditated in the deepest caves, and studied under the most revered masters. One morning, exhausted from his endless quest, he sat by a simple stream and watched the water flow. As he observed how the stream neither rushed toward the ocean nor resisted the rocks in its path, but simply flowed with whatever came, something shifted within him. The happiness he had been chasing for 30 years was already there, had always been there, waiting not to be found but to be uncovered. This is the first teaching that transforms everything you think you know about joy. True happiness is not something you acquire, it is something you remember. Like the sun that never stops shining, even when clouds pass over, your natural state of contentment exists beneath every worry, every fear, every moment of confusion. The Buddha discovered that what we call suffering is simply the forgetting of this truth, and what we call awakening is the remembering. When you stop trying to add happiness to your life and instead begin removing what obscures it, something miraculous occurs. You realize that you have been like someone frantically searching for their glasses while wearing them. The peace you seek is not somewhere else, waiting to be earned or achieved. It is the very awareness through which you are reading these words right now. The second teaching reveals why most approaches to happiness fail before they begin. We have been conditioned to believe that happiness depends on changing our circumstances, but the Buddha taught something radical, that happiness comes from changing our relationship to circumstances. A wealthy merchant and a poor farmer can experience the exact same rainfall, yet one curses it for ruining his goods, while the other celebrates it for nourishing his crops. The rain itself is neutral. Your experience lies not in what happens, but in how you hold what happens. This is where the practice of non-attachment becomes your greatest ally. Non-attachment does not mean caring less or loving less. It means loving so completely that you can hold everything lightly, like water cupped in your hands. When you grasp too tightly, even the most beautiful things slip through your fingers. When you hold with openness, even the simplest moments become sacred. Consider the lotus flower, which grows in muddy water, yet emerges pristine and beautiful. The lotus does not resist the mud, it transforms through it. Similarly, your happiness does not require perfect conditions. It requires the wisdom to bloom wherever you are planted, to find beauty in the midst of difficulty, to trust that even the murkiest circumstances can become the fertile ground for your awakening. Every moment of struggle contains within it the seeds of wisdom. Every challenge you face is an invitation to discover strength you did not know you possessed. The lotus teaches us that our greatest beauty often emerges not in spite of difficult conditions, but because of them. The third teaching addresses the source of most human misery, the addiction to mental stories. Your mind creates endless narratives about what should have happened, what might happen, what you deserve, what others think of you. These stories feel so real that you forget they are just thoughts passing through consciousness, like clouds across the sky. The Buddha taught that most of our suffering comes not from reality itself, but from our resistance to reality, our commentary on reality, our demand that reality be different than it is. Practice this simple awareness. Notice when you are lost in the story versus when you are present to what actually is. Right now, as you hear these words, your body is breathing, your heart is beating, life is flowing through you effortlessly. This is what is real. Everything else is mental elaboration. When you rest in what is real, you discover a happiness that needs no storyline, no justification, no external validation. There was once a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "What terrible luck." The farmer replied, "Perhaps." The next day, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbors exclaimed, "What wonderful fortune!" Again the farmer said, "Perhaps." When his son tried to tame one of the horses and broke his leg, the neighbors offered sympathy for this misfortune. "Perhaps," said the farmer. When war broke out and all young men were drafted except his injured son, the neighbors praised his good luck. The farmer's response remained the same, "Perhaps." This story reveals the futility of our constant labeling of experiences as good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate. Reality simply is. Our happiness depends not on what happens, but on our relationship to what happens. The fourth teaching recognizes that happiness is not a feeling, but a way of being. Feelings come and go like weather patterns. Sadness, anger, fear, excitement, all arise and dissolve in the vast space of your awareness. When you identify happiness with a particular feeling, you become dependent on maintaining that feeling, which is impossible and exhausting. True happiness is the spacious awareness that remains steady through all feelings, all circumstances, all changes. Think of yourself as the sky and emotions as clouds. Sometimes the sky is filled with dark storm clouds, sometimes with light and fluffy ones. Sometimes it appears completely clear. But the sky itself, your essential nature, is never damaged by any weather pattern. It simply provides the space for all experiences to arise and pass away. When you remember that you are the sky and not the clouds, you find an unshakable peace that no external circumstance can disturb. The fifth teaching illuminates why generosity and compassion are not just nice ideas, but practical pathways to joy. When you live from a sense of lack, believing there is not enough time, love, money, appreciation, you contract into a small, defended version of yourself. But when you practice giving, whether attention, kindness, forgiveness, or simply presence, you remember your abundance. You cannot simultaneously feel poor and act generously. Generosity is the direct experience of having more than enough, and this recognition floods you with contentment that no possession could provide. There is a beautiful paradox here. The more you give away, the richer you become. This is not mere poetry, but practical wisdom. When you offer genuine attention to someone who is speaking, you discover that listening itself is nourishing. When you forgive someone who has hurt you, you free yourself from the burden of resentment. When you share what you have without calculating what you might receive in return, you tap into an inexhaustible source of fulfillment. A traveling monk once arrived at a village during a terrible famine. The people were starving, hoarding what little food they had. The monk had only one small grain of rice, yet he prepared a great pot of water and ceremoniously placed the single grain into it. Curious villagers gathered to watch him stir this strange soup. One by one, ashamed of their selfishness, they began adding their hoarded vegetables, rice and meat to the pot. Soon there was enough soup to feed the entire village. The monk had demonstrated that abundance comes not from having more, but from the willingness to share what little you have. True wealth is not in accumulation, but in circulation. The sixth teaching reveals the transformative power of accepting impermanence instead of fighting it. Everything you love will change. Everything you fear will pass. Everything you are attached to will eventually dissolve. This truth, which initially appears terrifying, becomes the source of profound freedom when truly understood. If nothing lasts forever, then your current problems are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. If all things pass, then this moment, whatever it contains, is precious precisely because it will never come again. Watch how children play, completely absorbed, totally present, unconcerned with how long the game will last. They find joy not despite impermanence, but because of it. Each moment is fresh, unrepeatable, full of possibility. When you embrace the fleeting nature of everything, you stop postponing happiness until conditions improve and start discovering it within conditions as they are. There is a story of a king who called his wisest advisors together and asked them to create something that would make him humble when he was proud and hopeful when he was in despair. After much deliberation, they returned with a simple ring bearing the inscription, "This too shall pass." These 4 words contain the essence of impermanence. Your greatest joys and your deepest sorrows are both temporary visitors in the eternal space of your being. When you truly understand that nothing in the world of form is permanent, you stop clinging so desperately to pleasurable experiences and stop resisting painful ones with such intensity. Both are waves in the ocean of existence, and you are the ocean itself. The 7th teaching addresses the illusion of the separate self that struggles against life. Most unhappiness stems from the exhausting effort of maintaining a solid identity that must constantly be defended, improved, and validated. The Buddha discovered that this solid self is actually a collection of changing thoughts, sensations, and perceptions with no fixed center. When you see through the mirage of the separate self, you realize you are not a wave fighting the ocean, but the ocean expressing itself as a wave. This recognition brings immense relief. You no longer have to carry the burden of being someone in particular. You can flow with life instead of swimming against it. You can respond to situations freshly instead of reacting from old patterns. You discover that you are vast enough to include both joy and sorrow, strong enough to remain unbroken by any experience. Imagine trying to capture the wind in a jar. No matter how tightly you seal it, you will never hold the essence of what wind actually is: movement, flow, aliveness itself. Similarly, trying to nail down your identity into fixed concepts is futile. You are not a thing but a process, not a noun but a verb, not a solid entity but a dynamic expression of consciousness itself. When you stop trying to be someone and start allowing yourself to simply be, you discover a freedom that no prison can contain, and a happiness that no circumstance can diminish. The 8th teaching transforms your relationship with thoughts and emotions from resistance to curiosity. Instead of asking, "How can I get rid of this anxiety, this sadness, this anger?" you begin asking, "What is this experience trying to teach me? What would happen if I neither pushed it away nor indulged it, but simply observed it with compassionate attention?" When you stop fighting your inner experience, you discover that emotions are like storms, intense but temporary, and often clearing the air for something beautiful. This shift from resistance to acceptance does not mean becoming passive or resigned. It means developing the wisdom to distinguish between what you can change and what you must learn to dance with. You cannot control what thoughts arise in your mind, but you can choose how much attention to give them. You cannot prevent difficult emotions from visiting, but you can learn to receive them as teachers rather than enemies. A wise teacher once told her student, "You have 2 wolves fighting inside you. One wolf represents love, peace, hope, truth, kindness, and joy. The other represents hatred, anger, despair, lies, cruelty, and sorrow. Which wolf wins?" The student thought carefully and asked, "Which one do I feed?" This simple question contains profound wisdom. Your inner experience is shaped not by what arises in your consciousness, but by what you choose to nourish with your attention. When painful emotions arise, you can acknowledge them without feeding them with endless analysis or dramatic stories. When peaceful states emerge, you can appreciate them without grasping them desperately. The 9th and final teaching brings everything full circle. True happiness is not the achievement of any particular state, but the recognition of what has never been disturbed by any state. Beneath your thoughts is silent awareness. Beneath your emotions is unconditional presence. Beneath your personal story is limitless being. This is your original nature, your Buddha nature, the happiness that seeks nothing because it lacks nothing. A master was asked by a student, "Where can I find this Buddha nature you speak of?" The master smiled and replied, "Who is asking the question?" In that moment, the student realized that the seeker and the sought were one and the same. You are not trying to become happy. You are learning to recognize the happiness that you already are. Right now, in this very moment, you can stop seeking happiness and start being it. You can stop waiting for the right conditions and start recognizing the rightness of these conditions. You can stop looking for yourself in the future and start finding yourself in the eternal now. Take a breath, feel your aliveness, rest in the simple fact of your existence. This is where happiness has always been waiting. Not in any experience, but as the experiencer itself, not in any moment, but as the timeless awareness in which all moments arise and dissolve. The revolution begins when you realize you are already home.